Fletcher, another runner. Again, this is all very significant. She's jogging, she gets kidnapped. We're looking for her, then they finally find her. This was the Gabby Petito of 2022. Anyway, her name, Eliza Fletcher. The name Fletcher, Fletcher is arrow maker. Again, Artemis, arrow, the rocket crashed or cracked. Princess Diana cracked the 13th pillar. Again, this is all very significant, but Eliza literally means Fletcher. Eliza Fletcher literally means arrow. I guess it's arrow maker, but the fletching is the feather that goes on the shaft. My point is, we're looking at, I think, theater. And it's interesting, again, 13 is the repeated number. Girl in room 13, 13 minutes. And of course, Artemis hasn't actually launched yet. It's still a broken arrow. And broken arrow is code for nuclear accident, nuclear weapon accident, or emergency. And there have been 32 broken arrow incidents since 1950. So I think we're prepared for a new one. Okay, it's 1:04. I see a few others have joined in. I have sent out notifications. Again, we don't have as many people as we did before. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and bring in our guest, and we're going to go ahead and proceed. Again, I put a link to his Twitter below. I just invited him in, so just in a moment here, Les Luther should be joining. I'll make sure the audio sounds good. Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and let me check with the listeners. We have a number of people listening. Excellent. Looks
Okay.
like, okay, everything sounds fine on my end.
Awesome. Are we recording right now?
Yes, we are. We are, and I'll go ahead and edit this later, but we're on a live stream, but I record it live. And I have a number of notes, mostly taken from your Twitter account, but your Twitter account for people who just joined is Les Luther, and you are an illusion warfare correspondent.
Yes, sir.
Now, all right, that's COVID Cooties by Symbia. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll put a link to that delightful song. One of the best things to come out of 2020, next to the original footage from the Kung Flu in Wuhan when it started. That was a riot, but that wasn't really repeated after the original breakout. Most of you know what I'm talking about. back when it started, when it was actually scary. It's like, wow, people are just walking around and dropping. But then they brought that back again with Died Suddenly, the documentary produced by Stu Peters. And now Stu Peters is getting some backlash from his own side. The anti vax world is mad at his documentary. A lot of infighting. They're saying it's a psyop. And I didn't realize it, but he's the one who put out the documentary video called, I should use the word documentary a little more precisely. This sensationalist nonsense he put out called Watch the Water, about how there was snake venom in all of the pokies. But anyway, anti vaccine world is mad at Died Suddenly, the documentary, because it makes them look bad. And I think this is just worth pointing out because I called this thing out before it was even a documentary. I said, they're grasping at straws. They're grasping at clots, is what they're doing. And it's just one thing after another. The current thing on this side of the political aisle isn't some social justice warrior cause. It's just the newest way to fear this thing. And I'm kind of over it. Vax was a big hoax. And most of you here know my view on it, but my point here is that not only was the documentary just pure sensationalism, but many of the people in the video just dropping dead like they caught the kung flu, who were ascribed to have died from, their deaths were ascribed to clots. Many of them died before 2020, before the documentary or the poker was even out there. In other words, there was no due diligence in any of his research here. And this has, of course, been the result of people suggesting that he's just a misinformation super spreader. Here's what one person said: this film taints and tarnishes important information by covering it in a lot of garbage. And this actually sounds like controlled opposition, which is what they are accusing him of. I mean, it's almost cliche. Everybody who doesn't agree with me is controlled opposition. But in this case, they may have a point. Because if they did have a point, they don't anymore. Here's what the author said about it. He said, the opening credits of the film are seeded with references to other conspiracy theories like Bigfoot and UFOs, the Loch Ness Monster. What does this have to do with exactly? Anyway, just pointing this out, it's an update here. It looks like Stu Peters was a plant all along. And I'm not sure, I had to double check this, but I thought he had his origin as a rapper. Salty Siren says, I'm so over it. Oh, yeah, look, I was over it back in March of 2020 when I initially realized what it actually was. I said, okay, this is the modern replacement for the archaic concept of sin. They've just reintroduced it, and they have salvation, and this is going to divide society purposefully into saved and unsaved. The division is purposeful. It was not meant to be a uniting event, and it's ongoing. Okay, let us go ahead and continue. I want to go through my notes. A lot of this stuff might come up as random, but some of the stuff is just like, here's something intriguing, I think. James Cameron has a new movie out, a new Avatar film. And, of course, it's being talked about because of its visuals, which I'm going to go check it out and see. It looks like a lot of blue, a lot of water. I'm sure that it's loaded with symbolism. But remember, James Cameron was the director of Terminator 2. And Terminator 2 is chock full of 9/11 predictive programming. And the basic story about the Terminator going after JC. It's Satan and Jesus Christ. It's the sun setting personified, where the sun dies as the darkness kills it. The darkness is set, or the Terminator line. Anyway, this is James Cameron's work. Like all the other major metascriptors, his work has predictive programming and all of the usual Mystery Babylon symbolism, ritualistically described or played out through the protagonist and the antagonist. Anyway, here he is on 9/11 at the site of a movie he's doing, a documentary about the Titanic. I'm talking about James Cameron on 9/11 2001. He's in a submarine doing a documentary about the Titanic. Now, how does this connect? Well, quite simply, in addition to 9/11 predictive programming, Terminator 2 has the nuking of Seattle, which is very significant. We're talking about Pacific Coast. Well, the Titanic, as I've talked about pretty much all year, is another symbol for uh, it's a monument to man's hubris, like the Tower of Babel, too big to fail. The Titanic is the West. The iceberg is climate change we're all ignoring, and it's going to sink the unsinkable ship. The Titanic is just this way of describing the way the West has been treating the world, unlimited resources, and of course, this is just their narrative. And James Cameron plays into all of this. Now, what I'm thinking here is he's in a submarine hanging out at a Titanic when 9/11 happens. And the next 9/11, and he would be among those in the know considering his work already has featured predictive programming. The next 9/11 event, all signs indicate Seattle getting nuked, and submarines figure very prominently in this. As we've talked about, Hunt for Red October, much of the buildup has been for a submarine and Seattle. And here he is in a submarine on 9/11. Again, we're talking about one of the architects of the previous 9/11. One of. I mean, I don't know how many of these directors are directly in the know about what, but you can kind of trace their handiwork. And his signature is very significant. That's why it's significant that Avatar just came out. And I also want to point out, because you'll see the same directors reflected in the predictive programming. Roland Emmerich, director of Independence Day, was pretty well represented last year with the Moonfall. And I'm just pointing out, Independence Day gave the masses the visual reference they would need to believe 9/11. Buildings falling down, alien invaders, surprise attack, and in in that movie they all rally around the president. I mean, it was just predictive from start to finish. But same director brought us Moonfall, a more recent film about, well, the moon falling. And I'm not saying the moon's going to fall, but that movie gave us a lot of visuals of satellites falling, junk falling, space stations falling. And it's pretty much a pattern here. If you're seeing it in the movies, they're preparing you for it in, quote, real life. So just a heads up there. Very significant again. And then one more point to it. Not only was James Cameron in a submarine on 9/11, hanging around the set of the Titanic, the wreckage, and again, it's about the wreckage, but the Deep Sea Challenger is the name of the submarine that he was in. Deep Sea Challenger checking out the crashed Titanic on 9/11. I mean, what a day. Another level of symbolism here is the West is the Challenger. That's why the Titanic being destroyed is very significant. It's all symbolic here. And the Challenger, if you may recall, blew up at 1 minute 13 seconds. 113 is the date that the One World Tower opened, the one that replaced the twins. Anyway, just some James Cameron. You're going to hear more about him. I talked about him a few months ago because he was in an interview discussing how if there was some kind of Skynet, some artificial intelligence that wanted to get rid of us, it would do exactly what we're experiencing every day. It would look like this: that it would be using deep fakes and fake news to pit society against itself, and we would self-exterminate without destroying all the infrastructure. All right, let me catch up on comments. I'm going to try to catch up in a week. A week's worth of content here, which is really 14 days because they cram 24. Well, every 24 hours, I think they cram about 2 days worth of news. So we're going through like 2 weeks for the week we missed. I mean, it's a lot. A lot has happened. But I haven't missed anything. I've been very busy working on publications. The Infinite Plane Society Institute for Advanced Media Deconstruction is where we're systematizing a lot of our information, not just specific events that we've deconstructed, but the methodology, how we arrive at these conclusions, why we approach mass media the way that we do. I'm putting it into a Teachables online course, and I've been putting some work into some of this because I think it's important that we have really what I think we need is something very condensed, like a mass deprogramming guide. You have your idea of your regularly scheduled programming, and this is your regularly scheduled deprogramming. But my take on it is that what has happened is the world has been convinced, and this has been the work of movie magic and TV and government psyops going back generations, but they've been convinced that their television screen is a window to the world. and they respond as though it is that. And I'm saying no, that the window is actually a filter. And this filter, treated as a window, is a weak spot. You could say it's a blind spot in how we process and take in information. It's almost like not being able to recognize lies or logical fallacies. And it's very important to be able to recognize these things to not fall for, superstition and mind control. But as you no doubt are well aware, most of society falls for superstition, mind control, fear of the flooding brought about by the wrathful globe. I mean, even today, I think there were some freeways being shut down by environmentalists lying on the road. I mean, look, they're biodegradable. Just go over them. I'm not saying run over them, but for the most part, I think they should just all be arrested. If they want to auto compost, let them. I'm just saying, let them live consistent with their values before they impose it on us. They want you to live in a shanty town. They want you to do with less. Well, let them demonstrate by arresting all these climate change activists. Because what they're engaging in is a form of terrorism. It's subtle, but that I think we can classify them as terrorists. Before we start calling conspiracy theorists terrorists, let's call the people who want to shut down society because of their wild beliefs conspiracy theorists. We see these insurrectionists brought up as, oh, this is the end result of conspiracy theory. No, it's those nutcases gluing themselves to paintings, destroying art, lying in the roads, and setting themselves on fire badly. The guy that last set himself on fire during that tennis match barely got his arm to burn. His shirt said, ban private jets in the UK. And I'm like, okay, well, he clearly didn't believe in using jet fuel because he barely burned anything. And then right after that, there was this big climate meetup where all of the climate change fanatics around the world met to discuss how they can impose communism on us. And they all went out there in their private jets, like hundreds of private jets, to go talk about how they can solve the climate crisis, so called. All right, let us continue here. We are joined by says burning house, sinking ship. Oh, speaking of sinking ship, I just watched, I just binge watched because I've been painting. I've been working on private commissions, but I've been watching a show called 1899. Not going to give you any spoilers, but it contains a lot of the same ideas that we've seen in Westworld, and the idea of the West as a burning house or a sinking ship or a falling Tower of Babel. Reoccurring themes. But this one in particular reaffirmed what I thought about Westworld, because in a way it's a Westworld ripoff. Even the main characters look like the same and they have the same archetypes. But I had concluded that Westworld was also about Persephone going to Hades and breaking free of her imprisonment. And interestingly enough, 1899 is just chock full of Hades symbolism. Even the name of one of the ships, named for the three-headed hound of hell. Fascinating series. I'll probably talk about that some more if you haven't seen it. 1899. But the main thing about it is, this is not even a spoiler, but in my view, what it's about is the end of the West, and at some type of peak chaos, we have a savior arrive. Savior from space, likely, but the movie has this reference to Starman, David Bowie song, which actually has some very weird Kanye West tie-ins. If you haven't caught up with that, I have some notes. We'll go through that. All right, let me catch up on who is here again. We've been offline, but we'll be back on a regular schedule now. It took me about a solid month nonstop of painting 8 hours plus per day to get the eBay store rolling, but it's all going fine. I just sent out easily 100 paintings in the last month, and pretty much everything is moving according to plan here. A lot of big news, things coming up. Next month's going to be huge for Infinite Plane Radio, Infinite Plane Society, in a good, bad way. And I guess the best way to put this is just so you understand what's going to happen, or why you won't be surprised. Well, my one of my lawsuits involves a countersuit, which involves a really ridiculous and dishonest attempt at a trademark infringement suit, but it all went through by default because of my unwillingness to participate, because they wouldn't add the second defendant to the case, which is critical. And I'm going to fight the result. But anyway, next month I'm likely to be hit with a judgment. And last I checked, like $640,000, like pretty big. And it sounds egregious, it sounds insane, but I'm telling you it's a good thing. And the reason why, as you'll see in the coming months, is this channel, what we do here, it's worse than a Trojan horse. Like this is a gigantic can of worms. And what we are doing is stealing the fires of Olympus, if you think about it. Exposing how mass media operates, like how it operates at levels beyond your um, teleprompter reading level of news media. The people higher up in charge of perception management, psychological operations, concurrent programming that coincide with the political agendas of the day. Most people in media aren't aware of how controlled it actually is, and we are. And not only are we sharing this information, but we're using it in order to understand how media works at a very high level. And I think what we're doing is very important because most people are visually illiterate and they can't tell the difference between real and fake. And what we're doing, I think, is pushing back against what I see as a war on perception. I think that we are entering, in many ways, something of a dark age. It's like a religion that blinkers someone's sense of reality, but you wouldn't know it's a religion because it looks high tech. Because instead of a Bible, you have some sort of visor wrapped around your head. All right, let me go ahead and continue through your comments. Project Honda Rod has joined us. Brought a couple of penguins. Good to see you. Diana South says it's totally a CIA name, laughing at those who believe him. Oh, Stu Peters. I think so too. That's a world stage name. I brought one up earlier. John von Neumann coined the term technological singularity. And again, new man, transhumanism. I mean, all these world stage names they give away something here that you would have to be into Shakespeare. You'd have to really be into these types of high level puns and double entendres to really get it. But the world stage drama is replete with clues and hints and inside jokes. And we're inside on the inside jokes. And that's what I mean by what we're doing here is that, yeah, we're more informed than the masses who are merely misinformed. And there's a difference between being uninformed, misinformed, and of course what we are, which is informed. Ignoring the news doesn't protect you from the effects of the lemmings. And I know lemmings marching off cliffs is just like a cartoon thing, but space is a cartoon and everybody believes in that. All right, joined by Thinks He's a Penguin 101, Tyrone McCloskey says next 9/11 will be earthquake that takes out symbolic sites, and then the theories are rolled out underground nukes, never ending tension and debate. Interesting. Um, I mean, the obvious symbolism, and look, 9/11 was predicted by very obvious and direct symbolism. The obvious stuff says Pacific West Coast, Seattle gets the nuke, Space Needle falls, and some kind of, and this is probably connected with some kind of civil unrest. Like the story looks like this: civil unrest, and then Putin drops a nuke, Satan 2 or whatever. And I don't think it's a coincidence that last year Amazon cleared out thousands of workers from their downtown site, and they said it was because of a quote crime wave. And I was thinking, because last summer Seattle had these simulations done that said, yeah, if there was an earthquake here, it would bring a 42-foot wave up to where the Seattle Space Needle is. I mean, 42-foot waves from a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. They've already done drills for an earthquake that would put that area underwater. Like maybe it's not a crime wave they're relocating for, but a tidal wave. And this is all part of the story as we've been following that has unfolded. Psyopsicle says live on Thursday. Make for an even better Friday. Joining us from D Live. We're going to be live daily, most likely, once things really pick up. I believe very soon things are going to be very hectic. And I'm working on, like I said I would, putting everything into print. And everything is moving along swimmingly. I'm gathering old manuscripts, I'm updating them using Grammarly, preparing for print to sell on eBay, to sell direct, to sell on Amazon. But, I think it's very important to have this print wing of Infinite Plane Society, Infinite Plane Media out there, and we have more plans as well. I have a pretty extensive blueprint here that we'll be going over. Years in development. All right, continuing here, Cope Aesthetic says they had to end the Brittany Griner psyop to get her back before World War III started for an arms dealer, clown world. Yes, and the Brittany Griner psyop. Okay, number 42. 42 seconds of silence. I believe she was arrested on an 8-4, which is the 216th day of the year, which is again 6 cubes, 6 times 6 times 6. Very interesting symbolism all around. Totally fake. If you think she was actually arrested, no, I mean, it's a hoax. She was the subject of a hashtag, Free Britney. And it was like a year from the hashtag Free Britney for Free Britney Spears, because the QAnoners think she needed to be freed. Well, anyway, the Free Britney thing, 2 years in a row, it just seems like some kind of deeper level of drama here. But again, the faking of, or rather the nuking of Seattle is one of these psyops that has been, I think, predicted pretty extensively. It's on the bill, it's on the $100 bill. In fact, I could point to quite a lot of predictive programming in that regard. And just to let you know how accurate we are, if you haven't heard this stuff before, it was so clear that there was going to be some kind of ground zero in Seattle on 11/3 that we had actually predicted it beforehand. But if you think about it, 3/11 was the ground zero for the pandemic, and where did it start? Seattle, around that space needle. I mean, it's just fascinating how you can find that the predictive programming does in fact follow through. And we've been so up to speed with it that we were noticing and following TV shows real time that are matching with the political realities. I mean, I'm like watching the new Game of Thrones one minute, the next minute it has me thinking about Roe v. Wade. I'm like, wait, there's no way they knew. I mean, these writers aren't psychic, but how are these storylines perfectly coinciding with real time events? Like the Uvalde shooting happens, and the storyline matches the storyline of the season finale of FBI, which they didn't air because it was just too close to the real story. Or like look at the lone gunman right before 9/11. I mean, the list goes on. There's a 5-part documentary called Pandemic on Netflix before the thing. Most of you here are not new to any of this. I'm just pointing out that, once is coincidence, maybe, but, we get so many of these piling up, and the pattern has emerged. And the pattern is simply this. Your news is bent. If you haven't seen the 30-minute play from 1968 called News Benders, I cannot recommend it highly enough. And News Benders is about a news agency hiring someone who has a job offer he can't refuse, presenting the news, only they write it 5 years in advance. That's what the news benders do. And he gets some kind of implant, and he's under monitoring. And if he were to ever say, hey, the news is fake, we're going to fake the moon landing, his head would basically blow up. Like they have some kind of safeguards to make sure there are no whistleblowers, which is one of the storylines in the new series Inside Job Season 2, where this individual gets a job, and yeah, if he talks about it, his head will blow up, or little nanobots will eat his brain. I mean, this is a reoccurring theme. I mean, how do they keep all the secrets? And in fact, the other day, and maybe I'll get to this in the notes, someone had said, why aren't there any whistleblowers among the crisis actors? And I think we came up with 13 different reasons why you wouldn't have any whistleblowers, why you wouldn't even expect them. And we'll probably get to that. All right, let me go ahead and continue. Diana South says, imagine living through the past 1001 days and still not being the slight bit suspicious. Oh yes, look, we've been vindicated. It's not cherry picking. Some of the stuff just stands out. 911 days after the novel Corona, the Queen dies. I mean, it's just too perfectly scripted, like I said. And there's this default explanation that I continually argue against. Oh, there's just no way man could do this. It's too complex. Oh, these patterns, no way. It's AI, it's God. It's coincidence. It's synchronicity. No, it's a movie. You don't watch a movie and at the end just be totally surprised if you watch it more than once that it ends the same way. It's like, no, it's basically a film. There are no surprises. There are no coincidences. It was never random in the first place. You have to think about the fact that what they're doing is they are presenting a movie like a reality TV show over a period of time, and the public goes along with it, or if they don't, they're called conspiracy theorists. But the dominant storyline sticks, no matter how many of us call it fake. Let me catch up on comments. Let's see here. We have Zinvelis. Thanks for joining. Restless Bear says, I love how the club victims all had butt in their name somewhere. Oh, yes, Club Q. And again, Club Q is the shooting's blamed on Club Q, the political right. But the names of the people were like there was Loving, there was, I can get the list of names. So yeah, look, it's a nightclub, and all their names, it's like Loving, Rump, I don't know. And the hero who stopped the shooter owned a brewery, and at the brewery he had this display with bullets that were colored for the rainbow. And I'm like, there's some clue that maybe he had some kind of, I don't know, role in the future, some kind of LGBT related shooting. The Club Q shooting was totally fake. Nobody died, and you should be happy about that. It's disappointing when you bring somebody the good news and they want to treat you like a bearer of bad news. Like, no, I'm just presenting objective facts, and the fact is, that was a psyop engineered to play into the hands of the right. Because check this out, and this is also something that if you listen to this channel, we talked about this back in May. That, hey, look, the DHS is doing drills for domestic terrorists attacking the power grid in North Carolina. And what's happening right now? Exactly that. And they're blaming domestic violent extremists on the right who are trying to shut down drag queen shows. That's why they're attacking the power grid. They have created this MAGA ban that I have talked about. In America, they have created the counterpart to the Taliban. They have created the counterpart to the radical Islamic terrorists in their cells, only now it's incels, but they're still sexually repressed, and they are after Western women. They want to destroy the deep state, Great Satan. It's the same story, but it's just been transplanted from foreign alien invaders to domestic violent extremists. But the rationale is the same here. Not a coincidence. And we'll go into it because that's exactly the story here. And look, it ties into this though, because the day of the Club Q shooting, you actually had some high profile incidents of right wingers protesting a drag queen story hour. And of course, this is a way of making it look like, because if you recall, Alex Stein, of all people, was over there protesting one of these drag queen shows. And someone had said to him something about, well, they had guns out. And he had said to them, he was mocking them, why do you think you need these guns? It was just kind of a joke to him. They don't need guns. Why do they feel threatened? And I'm like, well, they're posturing as threatened. If you act like you need AR-15s to protect yourself from the right wingers, they look really bad. So I thought, okay, that's just a psyop. They're setting up the right. And what happened that night? The shooting. And then they pointed out, look who caused it, basically. Alex Stein shot up Club Q. You shot up Club Q if you oppose the drag queen story hour thing. I was thinking as an experiment, by the way, kind of a side note. Uh, what if we just invited a group of drag queens to read the Constitution and teach 9/11 truth at the local libraries? Like Building 7 type stuff. I mean, just basic 9/11 truth. I'm not even saying go full flat earth moon landing fakery. Then you would find out, what is this really about? Is it, because you'd find out how partisan it really is. All right, continuing here. Many interesting comments here. Phoenix Mercury was her team. Oh, Brittany Griner. Okay, yes. Yes, and of course, the phoenix is one of these reoccurring symbols that the cult loves to use. And mentioning that, I said she was arrested on 8/4. Well, that's the 216th day of the year. Again, 6 times 6 times 6, but 216 has to do with what Pythagoras called the phoenix cycle. So if you look up 216, I think the way it works is That's the time between incarnations or something along those lines. The 216 year phoenix cycle. The metatonic cycle, the Pythagorean 216 year rebirth period. Very interesting material here. This is from druidcraftcalendar.co. But again, this date 8-4. You'll find when you break it down, and I was listening to Jurassic Liars today, and he's done some extensive work, and I'd have to refer people to his channel. But yeah, with any of these characters that are heavily immersed in occult symbolism like this, you could pretty much just rule out whatever they're doing as being anything other than a hoax. By the way, this is interesting. America First, as in Kanye and Nick Fuentes. Yeah, America First. That was originally a Klan slogan. One God, one country, one flag, America First. If that doesn't tell you feds, all right, continuing. I had to go through all of my notes here. I mean, it's been a very interesting week. One of the things that came up was someone had presented an ISS transit, or what they alleged to be an ISS transit. And we had to talk about this for a long time because I've been trying to determine why do so many people believe in the space station when they haven't seen it? People will say, well, you can just see it. Just take your app. And my argument for that has always been, well, then you could just take your app and prove that Pokemon is real. You know, he's on the app. Again, my contention here is that the app is just there to track where this hypothetical would be, but it's like a simulation. So yeah, hypothetically, if you have this object orbiting the ball, if it is a ball, every 93 minutes, it's going to meet these transit points at these times, and everyone's on the same sheet. But I'm suggesting it's a hoax. The ISS transit footage I've seen has all been very much the same. You see a guy at a camera with a telescope, he looks through his telescope, then they do an insert shot. You don't get continuous footage. This is how sleight of mind works. This is how magic tricks work. If it wasn't a magic trick, you'd have a continuous shot. But my point is, people seem to think, well, this person says they saw a light, they saw something, what is it? And now, instead of having actually established that there is something there, you have people discussing, is it a drone? Is it a hologram? Is it a balloon? They start coming up with a list of things it could be. The trouble with this is, for anything to meet that 93-minute orbit circuit trek and match the app, it would have to be going 17,000 miles per hour. And there is nothing in the Earth's atmosphere that can go that fast. Literally nothing. Not a drone, not a balloon, nothing. Then people say, well, what are they seeing? And I'm saying, well, here's the non sequitur. Who says they're seeing anything? Or who says that the plane that they're seeing correlates to the app? And there's a leap in logic here. And I think this is what keeps the belief in the ISS alive. And it's kind of the same argument that it would be similar to saying, I live near bear-filled woods. You know, you like, let's say you live near some woods and you know it's full of bears, but you see something from a distance and you say, well, it might be Bigfoot. Like, well, what's your basis for introducing Bigfoot? What's your basis for even bringing your suspicion in and giving that the same weight as what you actually know to be there, the bears? Like, how do you even include that in the universe of possibilities? And I'm saying it's a non sequitur. That if you see a light in the sky, I don't think that we can jump to the conclusion that it correlates with the app. Not unless you've ruled out that it could be a plane. And again, rule out it's a bear, rule out it's a plane. I think it's just too extraordinary of a claim to let people get away with saying, I might have seen the ISS. No, you saw a light in the sky. It's a big leap. And one of the other things I've noted is that many of the people positing that this or that is an ISS transit, um, usually it's ruled out as a possibility just by the fact that it's too far past the setting of the sun. The shadow of the Earth would actually preclude the ISS from being visible because it, of course, reflects the sun. The ISS is going to have to go down soon. What I mean is it's special effects are outmoded. But I think it's important to bring it down in the minds of the believers. And I find it very peculiar that many people who can deconstruct the moon landings still think the ISS is up there. I'm like, I'm sorry, but the ISS is an easier takedown. But it's multifaceted. It's a very complex psychological operation slash reality TV show. And there are several different aspects to it to deconstruct. But we are more than up to the task. In fact, we've done it many times over. And I'm going to have to consolidate it into a single presentation. Like, it's an embarrassment that people still believe the space station's up there. And what I'm saying is, it's only held up there by hearsay. That's pretty much it. By hearsay. One, and faith, of course, in NASA. All right, let me go through your comments. Join my J Diggs. Released after 42 weeks. Oh, is that so? Continuing here, we have Angus MacGyver. Nobody died, nobody got hurt. Oh yeah, nobody died, nobody got hurt. I used to say nobody cried, but at the Club Q thing, you did have one crier out in front, although it was method acting. And most of these shootings happen at places where it's like an acting school, like School of Performance Art. I think the Parkland acting troupe, for example, is a perfect example of this. And I want to point out too, that when we're calling these events fake, we do have a basis for comparison. I'm not in denial of reality. I look at real shootings all the time on Twitter. Those don't get news coverage. The media doesn't care about handguns and gang violence. No, they care about AR-15s being carried by white kids with MAGA hats shooting up performance arts schools. The demographics they care about say everything. And the main thing it reveals, though, is that it's not about gun violence in principle. It's about what the AR-15 symbolizes. It's about um, really pushing the lines when it comes to this framing of the debate to extremes. But what's more, ultimately, they sue AR-15, Armalite 15, and get $73 million dollars, and they're complicit. Look, if they hand over $73 million dollars and they can't figure out it's over a hoax, then they are dupes or complicit. And I can't think of anybody that could be duped over $73 million dollars that easily. An entire company? No way. They're complicit. Look, same with Alex Jones. And, I don't want to be hypercritical. A lot of people are critical of him. He's being sued for $1 billion, etc. But the fact is, if you're being sued for $1 billion, and you can't state the plain, obvious truth with a 1 hour video breakdown of that PSYOP, then you're not trying very hard or you're a dupe. And no one's going to dupe me for $1 billion. If I'm going to lose $1 billion, I'm going to tell the truth. But you'll notice too that they focus on that one event without focusing on the entire war. Look, you have 20 years of fake school shootings. They focus on one tree so you don't see the forest. I almost think that Alex Jones is actually a red herring, that his purpose is not only to facilitate the arguments the public need to justify more censorship, but I think he's there so we all focus on that one event and not on 20 years of consecutive events that are all interconnected and all equally fake. That should have been the domino that brought down the PSYOP entertainment complex, but no, they managed to do damage control around that one event. Probably not a coincidence. All right, let me continue through your comments. Lots of people here. Vic Tree has joined us. Lickety Split, Travis Cloud. Joined here also by, all right, looks like about 40 people in the chat room. Again, it's been a few days, almost a week, and I want to catch up. I don't want to gloss over anything. I did buy a membership at Censor TV so I could hear the entire interview with Gavin McGinnis and Ye. Yeah, I put some money in Gavin's pocket. Look, they're all highly. Look, there's 42 people listening on the live stream on the audio. 42 on video, 42 on the audio. If you want to listen to just audio, go to infiniteplane.media or ips.monster or infiniteplane.live. They all go to the same place. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, the Kanye West thing got really interesting though, or the Ye thing. Before he left Twitter, he posted an image. It was a swastika superimposed over a Star of David, which happens to be the symbol of the Raelian cult. And it turns out that Musk is a Raelian. And of course, the Raelians believe in aliens, the Elohim, who are going to solve society's problems by giving us sex robots to diffuse our violent impulses. And they're going to clone the best of us and turn government over to a geniocracy. We'll be ruled by geniuses. Anyway, yeah, apparently Musk is like some kind of honorary member in that cult. But Ye had dropped this bizarre Instagram post where he said, "Am I the only one who thinks Elon could be a half Chinese clone?" And that's not all he said. I mean, I'll read the whole thing and then tell me this might tie into the Raelian thing. And this is Ye at his Charlie Manson-ist. Like sometimes it's O Ye Simpson. You know, right now it's Charles Ye Manson. Like he has these extremes. I can't tell. Is he going to go OJ? He's going to go Charlie. But this is Charlie. Listen to this. Quote, and this is in all caps. Am I the only one who thinks Elon could be half Chinese? Take a Chinese genius and mate them with a South African supermodel, and we have an Elon. And I say an Elon because they probably made 10 to 30 Elons, and he's the first genetic hybrid that stuck. Well, let's not forget about Obama. I'm sorry for using curse words in church, but I don't have another word for Obama yet. Let's unify and find out. It's from Ye. Likely your future president. I mean, just the fact that it's so unlikely, it's probably going to happen. You know, just being contrarian, you could have. I mean, that's how they are sometimes. They want to upset your expectations. Like, was Trump? I mean, Trump was the least believable by every metric. All right, let's continue through our notes here. I was talking about that TV series called 1899. Here's the premise. Set in 1899, the series follows a group of European emigrants traveling from London on a steamship named Kerberos to start new lives in New York City. And it has to do with a number of ships, but that name, of course, I thought that sounds very similar to Cerberus, or the Hound of Hell from Myth. And yeah, it's the same word, just different spellings. The Hound of Hell, both references to Hades, the underworld. I highly recommend it. I don't want to give any spoilers, but like I said, I think the main theme has to do with the burning of Westworld, or the underworld, in this movie, and it has to do with the Starman. Again, it's kind of a weird twist at the end, but if you're not familiar, Starman is a savior from space, prophesied in David Bowie's work and pretty much every religion. Why would they name it 1899? I have to dig deeper and find out. It has a lot of interesting antiquitech. Like if you're into that whole Tartarian thing, if you've looked into it, the 1899 series would have a lot of what would kind of constitute advanced technology, like in the 19th century, just stuff that seems anachronistic and out of place. Like I still wonder sometimes if John D didn't have an iPhone. John D, the original 007. I've been talking to OpenAI.com's chat bot. Have you talked to it yet? We've OpenAI brought you Dolly, and I've been doing some artwork with. I'll draw something, I'll tweet it, somebody will mix it with AI, and I'll try to paint it with some kind of medium to represent it, like just a new iteration, but letting it get remixed by this quote, AI. But I've been looking at chatopenai.com, and I was asking it questions, and this is not objective. It's basically a normie. I said, "Is the Earth flat?" It said, "No, the Earth is not flat. It's an oblate spheroid." This has been confirmed by multiple lines of scientific evidence, including satellite imagery, observations of the stars and planets. The idea that the Earth is flat has been debunked for centuries and is considered a pseudoscience. Like they already have the Wikipedia damage control programmed into its personality. Like you go to watch a video And if it has the word flat, you get this whole breakdown of how the Earth isn't. It's like, okay, well, that pretty much confirms what I thought. There's not going to be anything that's ungate kept, obviously. Now, in the Discord server today, I think we briefly veered into a conversation about, I believe, I brought up Darth Vader. We were talking about the Terminator, and I was comparing him to Darth Vader. Terminator versus JC, John Connor equals Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. It's a analogous set of archetypes here. And I brought up the statement about Luke, I'm your father. And of course, that's a Mandela effect. And somebody said they remembered it. And they were a little taken aback, I think, because I said, no, you don't remember it. Um, I guess it's because I'm saying you don't. I said, you don't remember it. You have faulty eyewitness recollection. And he said, you're telling me what I remember. And I said, yeah, I am. You can't remember it that way as it was not that way. You're tricking yourself. You do not remember Luke, I'm your father, as it's not possible because it wasn't in a script. And he said, you're drunk. No, I wasn't drunk. I'm just pointing out the fact that no, you actually do not remember it the way the Mandela effect says. You're misusing the word remember. And you're also asserting knowledge on something that's at best a vague memory, a vague recollection or reconstruction, a confabulation, and it matters. Why does it matter? Well, for one, 75% of the people exonerated from DNA evidence are usually found to have been convicted from nothing other than faulty eyewitness testimony. It matters that people place too much faith in their memory and stand by it. Not that I'm against your perfect memory or something, but I'm talking about uh, it's a very nuanced thing, but like the way that you recall how words are spelled is different from the way you might recall an event. And misspelling a word does not mean that reality shifted or that the dictionary changed. It means that you made a mistake, and we make mistakes all the time. I won't take somebody serious on their claims to be Mandela affected, that they're actually in belief, that they actually truly believe they remember it this way, unless they can demonstrate perfect memories. Like, unless you're a spelling bee champ or you get perfect grades, I'm not going to take your faulty eyewitness testimony as an actual eyewitness account of what you experienced. We have a documentary about the Mandela effect, by the way, in the works, but it's going to be a little more extensive than originally planned. As in, I don't want it just to be a slideshow with a narrator. We're adding some more content from real life. It has to be a real documentary, real people, etc. Okay, to continue, speaking of crisis actors, turns out that there is kind of a reference to the name Sexton, which is a very popular name among conspiracy theory researchers. Happens to do with the JFK assassination. On the corner of Bloody Elm and Houston is the Sexton Building. We're talking about Bloody Elm, Main Street, and Commerce that form a trident pattern with a triple underpass. And this is where the JFK assassination happened, the location. Anyway, this author, James Shelby Downward, suggested the name Sexton has something to do with graveyard connotations and is, quote, closely associated with the beetles of the genus Necrophorus or sexton beetles, so called because they bury the remains of tiny animals with their eggs. And I looked into it, and it turns out that yes, there is something called a sexton beetle, and they are black with red markings, and bearing beetles are true to their name. They bury the carcasses of small vertebrates such as birds and rodents as a food source for their larvae. Okay, continuing. Again, like I said, it's been a week. I picked up a lot of random notes. I just wanted to bring up here that we constantly notice certain names like Parkland, Highland Park, Parkland Hospital where JFK was shot. And the more we look into it, the more we found, especially this last summer, all kinds of shooting events with the name Park very consistent, very prominent. And I came to the conclusion that this park reference has to do with possibly Westworld being described as a park, a Westworld Park, um, Park, and maybe it has something to do with the Ark. And for a little while now, I've been saying that Elon Musk is Pope Elon, and he's going to save us. That the spaceship represents the modern Ark. And look who actually tweeted this. I mean, Elon Musk actually tweeted this image: Starship taking beings of Earth to Mars. And it has the Ark of Space written on the side of a starship, and then two of every animal going into the Ark of Space. So Mars is going to be binary from the very start, apparently. But yes, two giraffes, two elephants, two of everything, and it looks like a bunch of New World Order cops with guns keeping the people out of the Ark. Now that's ominous that he would even share this. Like when the time comes, when the climate changers and the climate change accelerationists, those of us who don't recycle, that's what they call us, climate change accelerationists. When we reap what we sow and there's a big flood, we're not going to get on the arks. I mean, not unless you have enough money. I mean, it's the rich are going to buy their way into the heavens. Lickety Split says looks real. Yeah, it's a colored pencil rendering. Like every single image of every satellite in space. I want to talk to my chat AI tonight. I'm going to ask it, where can I find images of real satellites in space? Because I don't think they've been told. I don't think the AI knows that space is fake. And that's a game changer if you think about it. All right, moving on here. Again, like I said, I'm doing my best to catch up a week's worth here, which is 2 weeks worth. Elon Musk's bedside table opens meme floodgates. In India, Musk's Twitter risks opening floodgates on hate and extremism. Floodgates open for hate speech against blacks, transgenders after Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. Just more reference to the floodgates. This whole year has been about that. It's been about floodgates. It's been about the Kraken being released. We talked about this early on in March. I mean, everything has really, for the most part, come to pass. Everything's been very consistent. I came across this bizarre story, and I look, QAnon, I mean, you got stale breadcrumbs. And how often do you hear the QAnoners say, trust the plan, eat popcorn, watch TV, watch the show? But they're constantly throwing up popcorn emojis. And I'm thinking about it this entire time. Popcorn is just code for truth or chicken feed. Truth or chicken feed being a term used to describe what intelligence agencies throw out there to keep people busy. Kind of like Hunter Biden's laptop. Since Friday, like if you know any QAnoners out there who are digging through Hunter's laptop, go check on them. They've had access to Hunter's laptop since Friday. Like they're fully immersed in this man's sexcapades and drug habits. It's like a really twisted OnlyFans account, and they're just immersed in it. It's been days and days and days. That's chicken feed. Anyway, I've been following the Q thing, and one of the characters that has emerged is this Queen of Canada, Queen Didaloo. But I remember bringing up how it seemed like there was some kind of Game of Thrones emerging because now you had a king of North America, which would presumably include Canada. And his name is King Carlson. I still haven't found a picture of him. I heard he smacks his lips a lot and it doesn't seem very king-like. I don't think it's related to Tucker, but the King of Canada, and then you have the Queen, oh no, the King of America, the Queen of Canada. These are just a few. But it turns out there are others. There's a King of Britain, there's a King of Sweden, and every one of them, they have their own groups. There's Queen Helen Edwards of Australia. There's Her Excellency Karen, Minister of New Jersey. Here's Queen Charmaine. Again, they all have basically jurisdiction over different areas. These are QAnoners, kings, and queens. Now, here's King Carlson being described, Vice.com. Wearing a Florida Gators t shirt, the Arizona man in his mid 40s attempts to convince hundreds of thousands watching his live streams that he's the real leader of the United States. King David Carlson explains he has a few million people to take out before he's done with his plan to install QAnon kings and queens across the world. Quote, we've managed to infiltrate large portions of the world's population to cut off the heads of the snake in many places around the world. Now, he's talking about some kind of a global coup. Now, what got even more interesting, I was kind of digging into this Queen Didaloo's trip across Canada with her RVs, and I guess it was kind of a tie in to the truckers. And the truckers are very patriotic. You know, the Canadian truckers driving across Canada to save it. Well, she goes out there with her RV, and when they get to the site, she says that the flag of Canada is red because of the blood of the children that the deep state in Canada's government sacrifice. And she burned a Canadian flag in front of a bunch of these Canadian trucker patriots, and they were chased out of town. All right, continuing, Travis Claus says, Tim, you're going to break it. Not sure what you mean, but I agree with you. We do have plans, actually, and it's beyond Trojan horse. Like, they will not accept anything. We provide a Trojan horse gift, it won't be accepted. Um, Nothing that I ever say here, nothing that we ever talk about will hit the world stage. They really are trying to essentially vaccinate minds against what we're talking about here. I mean, that's why this channel has been so suppressed. We have more than a dozen YouTube channels available to us, and they're all struck down. We were on 25 podcasting platforms. We were pulled down with fake copyright attacks. Not quite sure who's behind it, but we have a long-term plan, 30 years. I think we'll get revenge on everybody in that amount of time. But every single time this channel takes a hit, I focus on something else. And by the time we get this thing back and up again, things are better. We do build back better here routinely. And this time around, I think it's been very productive, as you're all going to see, especially with the publication wing. Angst G says, does Stu Peters' documentary qualify as chicken feed? Oh, yeah, no doubt. Truth or chicken feed. I said this early on, and there were some individuals featured in the documentary that I contacted before it came out. And I said, I was an embalmer at a central care facility. We had a high caseload, and clotting is normal for dead bodies. And embalmers are not medical professionals. And by the time they get the bodies, they've been sitting in the refrigerators for a few days. And not only that, but the only ones that you would find these anomalous clots in, as in died suddenly, would be autopsied. If they've been autopsied, then the embalmer is not going to do a single point injection where they're pulling out big clots like you saw in the documentary. No, it's a completely different process. You're talking about arteries being severed during the examination, and that's where they would find. Like, if there was anything to find, it would be found in the actual morgues, not at the embalming centers. The documentary is total garbage. I called it such way before it came out, and I think I've been 100% vindicated. Again, they were grasping at clots. If you want to support the Infinite Plane Society, you can join for 2023 with an annual membership, now 50% off for the next 22 days. If you're in the chat, just click the link there. Again, support IPS by joining. It's the best way to support what we're doing here and to keep this think tank rolling. And ultimately, that's what it's about, the think tank. I could do podcasting, I could pre-record things, but the fact is, when we have this live interaction where those of us in the know are real-time engaging in conjecture, research, and discussion, we're putting together a multi-million piece puzzle together. This is something that I think the powers that be would like to suppress, and I think we pretty much invented it. I mean, look at traditional radio. You have the host and the listeners all scattered. They can't talk to each other, and if they want to talk to the host and therefore talk to each other. They have to go through him, but they have to go through his screeners. I try to get on the show with Sean Hannity once because I wanted to troll him. Well, they took my name and number and said, "We'll call you back tomorrow if you check out." So I want to call and talk to Sean Hannity, and I have to be vetted for 24 hours first. Okay, I see how that works. And then think about class in school growing up. You have a teacher, then you have your students, and the teacher tells you what's in the book, and then you regurgitate it back. You don't pass notes. So, for all intents and purposes, you have a one on one direct relationship with the authoritarian at the center of the room or that one voice. Now, what we've done here is by opening up the chat, you have the live presentation, but you also have not only real time communication back and forth without any filters, without any sort of um, any kind of 24-hour vetting. We don't have a call screener or a chat screener, but the chatters can communicate. So the class or the listeners share notes laterally, real time. And of course, it's a leveling of the field, if you ask me. It's a overturning of the order of things. And that's kind of what we're doing in the first place. I think there's been an inversion. The public is in Wonderland. And what we're doing is we're fixing things. In my view, we're taking information that would only be available to those at the capstone of this big, massive pyramid scheme, and we're sharing it with the bottom level, leveling it. Therefore, they no longer have some kind of advantage over us, like crisis actors, the psyop entertainment complex in general. Those wizards behind these perception management stunts, they can't trigger us. They don't have that kind of power anymore. All right, let me continue here. Appreciate everybody joining. Again, joining at ips.monster. Join for a year. Get 50% off with that link. We are unstoppable, and I am going to get sued. There's going to be years of legal back and forth from a few different directions. I'm suing YouTube. In fact, I've been contacted by I actually contacted the Attorney General's office there in California. Look, it's going somewhere. YouTube is a future defendant in a case where basically they're responsible for aiding and abetting in identity theft against me. And that's going to take some time here, but you're going to see in the future, especially starting next month. Um, I don't let it overwhelm me, but this channel's always been contested. We've always had our beefs, we've always had our trolls, our enemies, and it has taken a lot of legal work to keep this thing going. But we are the channel that unmasked this Q psyop deeper than anybody, and that has yet to reach mainstream. And that's why I think it's great news that I'm likely going to be hit with with a massive liability because it's newsworthy, and anything that gets Infinite Plane Society on the news is going to help with our bigger agenda here, which of course is this. What is it? You want to call it a revolution of the mind. In a way, we're talking about this process of removing that filter. And when I say removing that filter, I mean it's like think about the significance of people who were formerly 100% gate kept on this topic, learning about crisis actors. Before you knew about fake news, you were only stuck with the alternative explanation of the false flag theory. Like, every one of these terrible things is exactly happening as reported, although we have a different interpretation on who did it or why. But the essential thing is, it still happened. Like, we lived in a much darker world, very nightmarish, until we unplugged. And it was that little crack in the matrix, that little glitch that showed us, okay, this much is fake. Like, that's a pretty big deal. It's a paradigm shift. And I think that we can widen that rift. We can actually show more behind the scene than just faked shootings to advance various psyops. I mean political agendas. These psyops are more than just advancing wars. I say perception management operations because it's more extensive than things merely involving violence. And we talk about these things all the time, but they're so pervasive, it's worth mentioning that psychological operations are the rule, not the exception. The Jussie Smollett scandal was intentional and revealed intentionally to give you the impression that if anybody ever tried to fake out the news media, they would expose it and humiliate the person. No, that was actually, it's a psyop within a psyop. It's what you'd call fake fake. Angst G says, if you're hit with a judgment, is that something you can appeal? We'll see. The way I'm looking at it is, it was a countersuit, and I think it was nothing more than malicious prosecution. And I think the basis for suing me was very fraudulent in that there's a public domain piece of crap clip art which you could download for free and put on a business card, and it's a scientist. Well, I put a beak on it. Like literally, I put the penguin beak on that scientist. And what this, I think he thinks he's clever. What this defendant did, because I was suing him at the time for defamation, for emailing advertisers, etc. Well, he registered it with the USPTO and he said, no, I'm going to trademark this public domain clip art. I mean, that would be like trademarking an emoji. And he's like, okay, now you committed trademark libel. And then he sued me for $640,000. I'm like, okay, I mean, actually, it's 600,000, but then 30,000 for his attorney fees, 12,000 for butt hurt, feelings. I'm like, okay, show me the receipts where you went to the feelings doctor and he fixed your feelings. He patched them up, he massaged them or whatever. It's clearly a joke, but my point is, I told the judge this is malicious prosecution, it's retaliation, and if you succeed at something like that, it looks bad. I think it just looks bad on the judge. But look, I'm not worried about it in the slightest. It's not going to stop me. What it's going to do, it's going to platform us. And I say us, this think tank. They don't want to shine a spotlight on me because I am ground zero for an infodemic. Yep, I'm like patient zero for an infodemic that they won't be able to push back. And what I'm assembling right now is a can of worms, got some accelerant, and I'm ready for any kind of blowback for whatever kind of bad press I get. And I'm assuming it's going to be bad press. I'm going to be looked at as a bad guy because his evidence against me consisted of about 90 pages of blog posts and memes and statements like, oh, he's a flat earther. Like, am I a flat earther? I'm sorry, but are you even a globe earther? Show me the curve. Like, I'm shape agnostic. Show me what's at the edge of the universe. I mean, don't act like you have all the answers. We're asking the same questions, but our questions are a little more localized than assuming the answer is way out there instead of much closer. And this conversation is more nuanced than flat or round. To say someone is a quote flat earther, I'm sorry, but like establish that you're a globe earther first. I'm an earther. That's it. I'm an earther. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm on. But beyond that, yeah, I'm not really obliged to commit. And it's a very important question because it opens up a lot of things. And I think that it's a gateway to other very important questions, not a gateway to hate. It doesn't go from, oh, the earth might be flat, hail Hitler. That's what they want you to think. No, it's more like, okay, if they're misrepresenting it, then they're hiding land. Maybe they're hiding Atlantis. Or if they're not hiding land, they're hiding something else. Maybe they're hiding technology. But if they're hiding something, then it matters. And my position on this is it's far beyond about round or flat or shape. It's about worldview control. I think NASA is about worldview control. I think they fake more than space. I think NASA's behind a lot of psychological operations. Like that's just where they organize it all. That's the top of the capstone. I think NASA is is worldview warfare against everybody. It's not like you think about your military. Oh, it's to defend us from the other guys. No, it's to maintain the illusion of all these big threats. Like I admit it, I was a crisis actor, but I got paid well. I didn't stick around very long, but I think the entire time I was in the military, yeah, look, I was a crisis actor. My job was to perpetuate the belief in nukes, nuke fallout, and pandemics, and of course, all the remediation and decontamination techniques. And my entire job was premised on nuclear fallout, high altitude nuclear detonations, EMP blasts, and preparing for this as though it were eventual. Now, I'm just saying that the fact that everybody in all of the services believe, all of the armed services believe this. They believe in these particular things. They also believe in the official story of fill in the blank psyop. They're all de facto crisis actors. And we did do drills nonstop, simulating things nonstop. One of my jobs was helping to simulate depleted uranium rounds. And then, of course, you find vehicles hit with depleted uranium. You have to detect to see if it's radioactive. You wear the mask. I mean, it's look, PPE from 2020, if you ask me, I think that was all part of conditioning people to act as though the stuff were real, to make it real. Like a fashion statement was used to spread this big illusion. All right, continuing here. Look, I can admit that I was a crisis actor, but I didn't know it. But in 2020, I was a conscious crisis actor. I was a little miffed that I only got paid $1,200. All right, Wee says, makes sense. NASA would be the cover for the biggest black ops. Oh, yeah, look, I think you can draw a connection here between Kubrick, Apollo 11, 9/11, and the JFK assassination. And that's just a handful. And I'm saying it's the same production department. Okay, continuing. Lean Dion says their cartoon fake space doesn't account for their vast daily budget. Yeah, I would say that their money's going somewhere. It's not going into the production value. Like we're not getting Avatar 2. We're getting like something from PBS, like public broadcasting. It's pretty pathetic. I mean, look, the space station has to go down because it's an embarrassment, it's an eyesore, and the special effects are far behind video games. Netflix. I watched stuff on Netflix with that show. I think it's called Love and Robots and Death or something. Really great animation, animated series, short movies, and some of them are so real. It takes me a minute to realize, okay, this is fake. And I am visually literate. I can tell between real and fake, and that some of these take a minute. Okay, let's see here. I wanted to continue. Here's a couple of things. Now, I can make the case that 9/11 was a hoax in several ways, but I think with all of these things, one of the biggest clues here, I think, is of course the predictive programming that goes into it. We go back, we look at these different events, and you find out, we should have seen it coming. But at the time, we didn't know how it worked. Nobody at the time of 9/11 could have known the full extent of the hoaxery. But these days, we catch things in advance. But I've been looking back at psyops from years past just to see, who was unraveling it at the deepest level. And I found this really great article from peaceofmindful.com. And he broke down the Littleton shooting, Colorado, Klebold and Eric. Here we go. The Littleton shooters, the Columbine massacre. Now, a couple of things about this. One of the things he pointed out was what he called are spook markers. And by spook markers, he's talking about what we always point out, these strange numbers, the coincidences all over these things. He says, and this is his explanation, please do not confuse this mere signaling system with gematria, or translating words into numbers. I will be highlighting numbers I regard as significant or spook markers, as I call them. This is merely secret communication devices by which intelligence agents, Freemasons or whatever, can tell the others these events are contrived and fake. For example, 1119 and 1208 are very significant here. Now, what he's pointing out is what we often point out, that you can find all kinds of numerical coincidences around these psyops. And I used to just say hoax code. You can leave it at that. You can find deeper levels of meaning, although I do agree with him to an extent that Adding and subtracting the numbers and drawing conclusions based on that could just be a lot of misinformation. But this event, again, Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold. Dylan's where we get Dylan Roof from. They use these names that tie together. Anyway, this is a fantastic breakdown of the event and all of the hoaxery. Much of it was filmed in advance. Nobody died, nobody cried. And what's even more? This movie came out just after The Matrix came out. And if you recall, this movie, The Matrix, brought out that fashion of the black trench coats, the black shades, and the guns. Worth pointing out here that the glorification of gun violence in Hollywood is usually done by anti gun types. Why is that? They're against guns, but they glorify them in movies. It's all gun porn. Why is that? It's because it's actually an anti gun agenda. Their glorification of guns, their quote, gun culture, is really a construct of the left. The right doesn't worship guns. That's mostly a construct that they give us in these movies to make it look like we have a toxic relationship with guns and we need to get rid of them. It's an exaggeration on purpose. But The Matrix played a big part in that. And if you recall, the shooters came out dressed up just like out of The Matrix. Here it goes. This is from peaceofmindful.com. It had just been released prior to the Columbine event. The image below is striking. On the right are the two actors chosen to play Klebold and Harris, only to build a body of evidence to insinuate that these were real people of a troubled nature. Yes, that's definitely a connection. Now, he does go through a lot of the numbers and the timestamps. And, for example, a 3-hour, 33-minute video from the cafeteria that day. And yeah, these are consistent markers throughout many of these events. Now, funnily enough, it seems that we might have an actual connection here or an answer as to who these two characters were. Because again, these psyop actors, they're not really dying. It's not a false flag. The government didn't agitate these guys or provoke them. The FBI didn't give them guns and say, go shoot up a school. Uh, these were actors and they didn't die. Nobody died, nobody cried. Like, it's as simple as that. But I believe that a number of people have actually come to the same conclusion. We have an answer as to who they became or who they were known as afterward. And that would be Parker and Stone. Yes. Now you can compare the two. We're talking about the creators of South Park, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and of course they do look like spitting images of the Columbine shooters. And you can just grab a couple images at random, and I've been going through them, and I think this stands. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are dead ringers for Klebold and Harris. Even the most recent pictures, very, very accurate. I think it's them. And there's another one as well. Let me point out another one that's related just to show you how consistent this pattern is. Do you remember Gabby Petito? Like this year, the character, the person who played Persephone was Eliza Fletcher, who was kidnapped. The year before that, it was Gabby Petito, kidnapped by Brian Laundrie. Gabby Petito happened to be in a 2013 music video for Sandy Hook, carrying a sign says here, "I'm irreplaceable." What are the odds from Sandy Hook to that? Going through comments, We says, "Why waste any black budget on special effects? The public's completely snowed by the crappy video." I have a few theories about this, and there's a strong possibility that the terrible special effects and the bad acting is there on purpose to gaslight you. Like when somebody's lying and you know they're lying, you can call them out. But if you don't, if you just have a suspicion, you can't really say anything. And I think maybe what they're trying to do is kind of create this subconscious suspicion it's fake, but not enough to quite call it out. Like everything just seems a little surreal. I think it's part of gaslighting, in other words. And gaslighting is the word of the year Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it just describes a process of undermining somebody's sense of reality by getting them to question their own perceptions, but always having their perceptions contradicted by what you tell them to believe. Like it's probably on purpose. I have a lot to say on that topic. I mean, it's not a coincidence that you see the same faces appearing under different guises. I think it's again psychological warfare. Alex Jones seemed to have some kind of, I guess, remorse about having Ye and Nick Fuentes on his show because Alex Jones is a guard railer in many ways, and he doesn't go full Hitler. They don't. He doesn't go full anti-Semite or anti-Jew. What he'll say is globalists. He uses dog whistles, and that's so they can stay on the air and not get. They really do toe the line. Well, Nick Fuentes goes out and says the quiet parts out loud, and so does Ye. Well, um, Alex Jones went on to Steven Crowder's show, and he said that Kanye West and Nick Fuentes have some kind of homoerotic asphyxiations with Hitler. That's where he went with it. He says, quote, the real creep factor, this is from InfoWars, the real creep factor is, man, homoerotic, I have to pay to read The Independent or these ads are going to overwhelm me. But before that, he had said to Ye that Ye has a Hitler fetish. But he was trying to deflect from Hitler. He said, no, Ye, you're nothing like Hitler. You're not like him. And Ye's like, no, I actually am. We need to stop dissing the Nazis. I mean, this story has been ongoing. I think they're not able to totally bury it. But listen to this. This is the damage control side of it. He says, there's a real creepy factor with this Hitler stuff. It's like some homoerotic thing over Hitler. That's kind of what was going on there. There is a Hitler fetish. And I'm not into dudes in fancy peacock military uniforms, by the way. Some of the biggest. And then he goes on to say that Hitler was an occultist. Hitler was a baby killer. Anyway, we got to stop dissing the Nazis, said Ye. I've looked into it, and this did make me think. I did learn a little bit from it, and I've concluded that the argument for this Jewish media mafia control or whatever that Kanye is positing, I think it's just the far right version of the far left blaming white privilege and systemic racism for everything. I think these are equivalent partisan scapegoats, and they can't both be true, which makes me think they're both fake. Now, in the last week, things have shifted quite a bit. I think that when Fuentes and Ye went to meet with Trump and then got dumped on, I think they shifted things a bit. And now the expectations of the far right have been wedded for something a little more extreme. Here, this is from Vice.com. Ever since Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene disavowed white nationalist Nick Fuentes, the far right has viciously turned on her. Calling her large Marge for some reason when she's like 5'2". They're dumping her. And I think they're going to dump Trump. I mean, they are pushing things over far to the right, but I have a theory about it. Like, I don't think this is merely Ye getting clicks. I don't think this is about merely the attention economy. If you look at the overall story here, you have Elon Musk opening the floodgates, independent. QAnon, white nationalists, hate speech. Experts reveal how the floodgates have opened. Okay, the floodgates have opened to what? Hate speech. Now, I've been talking about how Kanye West or Charles Ye Manson, how he's being set up. He is this Charles Manson-esque like character calling for the helter-skelter scenario. Well, here are the floodgates opening to enable this. If anything happens right now, who are they going to blame it on? Let's say some bowl cut pops off at a synagogue again, or something else. Ye is going to get blamed. Musk will get blamed. The Club Q shooting has already been blamed on the right. They've already blamed anybody on the right that said anything critical, anything having to do with grooming. If you criticize groomers, and I'm not talking about Catholic Church. I'm not talking about the Boy Scouts. I'm not talking about the Southern Baptists or the public school teachers. I'm talking about if you criticize the drag queens as groomers, um, you would be blamed for the Club Q shooting. And this scapegoating needs to stop. Blame the shooter. Blame his dad, actually. His dad was pretty bad, if you saw that. But I mean, if you ask me, it was all a big setup. And when it comes down to it, setups, I think Nick Fuentes is a Democrat plant. Same with Milo. All right, let me go through some comments. Diana South says Elon looks like Liberace. He does, actually, in that image there. Elon's a combination of Werner von Braun and I think, what is it, a Chinese clone, Willy Wonka, and Iron Man. He responded to Kanye's statement about how he could be a clone, and he said he found it to be quite a compliment. Kanye West is dragging far-right figures into the mainstream. Yep, as I said. Trump called for the termination of the Constitution because of Hunter Biden's laptop, and then it turned out to be a nothing burger as I predicted. I said it's basically an OnlyFans account for Hunter Biden, and his OnlyFans are the GOP. It's a nothing burger. And it turned out to be a nothing burger. You had all kinds of people on the right, like Jack Posobiec, saying this is the most historic Twitter info dump in history. And like, no, it was a nothing. Big nothing burger. Elon Musk says he wanted to punch Kanye for posting the Raelian symbol on Twitter. I actually have that audio. Do you want to hear Elon Musk talking about punching Kanye? Like, if this is like one of the least threatening sounding threats to punch somebody I've ever heard. Like, does he even know how to throw a punch?
That's not actually legal. So the question is, what is incitement to violence? And I think, posting swastikas in what is obviously not a, good way is an incitement to violence. I personally wanted to punch Kanye, so...
It's an incitement to violence. I personally want to punch Kanye. What?
Good way is an incitement to violence. I personally wanted to punch Kanye, so...
Yeah, Kanye's being violent. Off with his head. Okay, we can trust him with Twitter. Now, I'm gonna continue this tomorrow. We only got like 20% of the way through my notes. Like, we're not even close. Not even. But I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of up to speed on where things are going. Things are going full speed ahead, not stopping. This is a quote from William Blake from The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And this is with regard to what I've been saying about how the big deception has been this epistemological inversion. They have pulled people through the TV screen. They take it as a source of information. They have mistaken the screen for a window to the world when it is in fact a filter. This is William Blake, quote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks in his cavern." And the chinks in the cavern refer to the cracks, the glitches in the matrix, the smiling crisis actor, the things that give you the insights. And that's what we have been working on here in this channel specifically. The glitches. And then it's from these glitches that we've been ascertaining the bigger picture. The big picture is basically the public has been left out of pretty much everything. We have an esoteric version of what's really going on. And what you're learning here, what we learn here, what we elucidate is what I would call esoteric media, the inside. What those people at the top of the pyramid scheme are apprised of. Anyway, thanks for joining, likely tomorrow morning, but definitely get on the text alerts. I'm going to keep that going. Thanks all of you for supporting the channel, and if you click the link below, you can join for 50% off for a year. And I'm going to reboot the 24/7 early in the morning. I have to set up a new playlist. This is Lucifer Tim, 33rd Degree.
Looks to scans and this door in front of me. Yes, there was a black lady stating it's a